What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lastercast, and we have yet another author interview. I am super excited today to be talking to Robert Essig, who has written multiple short stories, novellas, and novels. And today we are talking about one story in particular, The CIRCUS OASIS, which was just published by Encyclopocalypse. I actually got that right on the first time this time, so that's nice.
That's a tongue twister.
It really is, right? So, Robert, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, yeah. It's great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I just read The CIRCUS OASIS, and that is my first book of yours that I've ever read. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And so
Awesome.
I was going to ask you, you have another book coming out from Encyclopocalypse too, right? MOJAVE, the MOJAVE MUDCAVES?
Yes, yes.
And it sounds like those two books are similar in some ways. Do you feel like there's a similarity between CIRCUS OASIS and MOJAVE MUDCAVES?
Outside of the fact that they both take place in the desert, no, not really. I mean, they're not connected in any way.
No.
I used to live in Southern California, and so I traveled through the Mojave Desert. My parents live in Arizona, so I would travel through there a lot and get a lot of ideas. And the CIRCUS OASIS takes place at the Salton Sea, and I've been through there a lot. So it's just areas that I know, pretty well. So they kind of made for good backdrops for my stories. But the connection outside of both being in the desert and Southern California, that's about it.
Okay. Well, did you pitch both of them at the same time to Encyclopocalypse, or did you pitch like one and then the next one?
They were, how did it go? Well, one of those stories, CIRCUS OASIS, there was a publisher that recently folded, and they had been considering CIRCUS OASIS for a little while, and it had been kind of tied up with them for actually quite a while, a couple of years. And when they folded, Sean Durger of Encyclopocalypse, got it.
Yeah.
He reached out, and I told him I had two books, they might be interested in, and they ended up taking both of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sean Durger is actually the one that let me know about your book, and he kind of gives me the heads up about what's coming out from Encyclopocalypse. And so far, everything I've gotten from that company has just been like fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say that they also put out some really awesome audiobooks. Is there any talk about there being a CIRCUS OASIS audiobook?
Absolutely. There's going to be an audiobook for both of these books. The CIRCUS OASIS one, my understanding is it's been recorded. We picked a narrator. It's in the can. It's just getting post-production work and should be out within the next couple of weeks, is my understanding.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when does MOJAVE MUDCAVES come out?
The book comes out on August 12th. I always want to say September. August 12th. So that comes out in about a week.
Yeah.
The audiobook, I'm not sure yet. I haven't heard anything on that yet, but I'm soon to follow, I'm sure.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well, cool. So speaking of CIRCUS OASIS, I actually don't want to spoil the book for people that are watching, because it just came out. And I just don't like to spoil books in general. Yeah. But I was going to say, though, that there's essentially like two major mysteries, I think, that are going on throughout the book. And there's one that's kind of like a supernatural one. And then there's one that's like, like what's going on behind the scenes of this, hotel. And for the main characters, one of the things that I think really sold this book for me was I really cared about these main characters. I really did not want them to suffer. And Is there something that connects you to the Burkhead family, or to man, I have her name written down. It's been a while since I read the book. Bet.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Do you have any kind of connection to them? Like, where'd you get the idea for that family and Bet?
Well, with the family, it's a single child family. I'm an only child, so I relate probably more to that family dynamic than I do a family that's got 2-3 kids.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that very easily. And, I figured every family has their issues, even when they're going out and doing something fun. So, there's a little bit of family drama, I guess you can call it, the kind of stuff that kids don't always understand that's going on around them and whatnot. So that's what made it easy to, draw on, to make the characters believable and hopefully make the reader care about them. you know, because that's very important. You want to care about the characters. We don't want 2D characters that you don't give a damn about. So sounds like I might have, you know, when people have talked about the book with me, that's something that gets brought up a lot, which is really cool because you get worried like, oh man, I hope that they like the characters and not only like them, but care about them. So I consider that a plus when I hear, you know, that you gave a damn about the characters.
Right. You know, that's funny because like that was going to be my next thing I was going to say was that like I was also an only child as well. And I went on many trips with my parents, kind of similar to what happens with the Burkheads, right? And I feel like you captured that feeling so well of being the kid, and then like kind of experience like the adults are obviously going through adult issues, and you know just the little girl, just like from her perspective, I think you really captured that really well. And it's like some parts in that are just as rough to kind of read as opposed to like the horrific stuff that happens in the book too.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, I'm really glad that it came through because that was exactly what I was going for. Even the way that the girl Danny, how she perceives things going on, like she understands, but you know, a kid always kind of, you don't totally get everything, and it sounds like that came through. Which like I said, being an only child, that's something that's really easy for me to write about because I totally understand that dynamic. Yeah. If I were to write about a family with 3 kids, I'd probably get some stuff wrong because I really don't completely know, you know, the dynamic of that family. Yeah. Not to say that every book I write is going to always have a family of 3 like that or something, but it's definitely a little bit easier for me to tap into that and probably make it, you know, very believable.
Yeah. So is that something that you aim for with your books, is to like be kind of like as realistic with the emotional dynamics and like the relationships, like as just in general with horror? I've interviewed quite a few people now at this point on this channel, and it seems like the people that I'm always seeking out are the ones that can tell stories that even if there wasn't a horror element, it would still be just good on its own, right? And then I always see horror books where it's just like, you know, just gore and you know, horrible stuff happening. Do you try to hit that emotional mark with all your books, or are there books that you write that are also like, you know, just fucked up books too?
Yeah, there definitely are some of the earlier ones are probably more just messed up books, like Death Obsessed or Brothers in Blood are 2 books, for instance, that I mean, I maybe the earlier books that I've written, so I probably wasn't as keen on hitting in those sort of a you know, emotional checklist or whatever that gets someone really invested in the character. And that's just something I see, a shortcoming that I probably had earlier on. Yeah. Now with everything I write, regardless of if it's totally balls to the wall extreme or something that's a little more of a slow burn or something, I do want the characters to ring true, and I want there to be some kind of emotional connection with everything. That was probably a fault of mine in the beginning, was maybe not writing characters as good as I eventually feel like I can now.
Yeah.
Because hey, even if you're going to have guts all over the walls, it's going to be way more impactful if the reader cares about the people whose guts are getting flung all over the wall or whatever, you know? I mean,
exactly. So you were talking about like your earlier work. Like, when did you really just hardcore get into writing to where it was like, you know, just putting so much effort into it? Were you a teenager, 20s? What was going on?
I started writing when I was a teenager after a teacher read a short story and she liked it. And I was like, oh, wow. I used to always just read books in class, like Stephen King and Dean Koontz and stuff, rather than pay attention. And teachers didn't seem to mind. They just let me literally sit there with a book and read while the classes, it was really weird. And after that, I just started writing stories in class all the time. But then I kind of got away from it for several years until I was somewhere in my mid-20s. And then I remembered how much I liked writing. So I got back into it and kind of did some research on how you actually submit your stories and try and get them published. I think it was reading Stephen King's book on writing, where he talks a lot about the craft, that really made me go, holy shit, maybe I can do this. Yeah. And then I took it seriously, and I've, you know, full steam ahead, you know, too many years now, it seems.
How how much do you write per day? Do you write for like multiple hours? Do you have a certain page count you try to hit?
My thing now, what works, and I've tried a lot of different things over the years. I mean, I started writing, I didn't have a kid. Now I have a kid. So that, you know, obviously when he was a baby, that changed things. And I kind of had to bounce around with the way that I operate. But what works for me now is that I wake up earlier than anyone in the household, get up at 5:25. I write for about an hour to an hour and a half before I have to get ready for work, get my son ready for school. That's my writing time. And I outline now. I never did that in the beginning.
Oh, okay.
And I sometimes wonder if some of the earlier books suffer from that. And now I feel like my stories are tighter and more concise because of the outlining.
Yeah.
But by having the outline, I know where the story's going. So I can use that hour that I have, hour and a half in the morning, and I can just get right into it. And I can usually knock out about 1,000 to 1,200 words.
Oh, nice.
And that, so that if I get it out, and that's good, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. Oh, am I going to have time to write later? It's done.
Yeah.
It's the way I like to work.
You know, you mentioned having a son, and you know, the dad in the Circus Oasis, Micah, he I could actually kind of relate to him too, because I have two little kids too, and just like you go into this whole aspect of like being a father and just how it can be kind of difficult, and I just felt like you really kind of captured that, you know, where you have to kind of, there's the expectation of what the father is like, and then there's what Micah actually is, and there's a lot of like tension and conflict between the two. And I thought that was really well done as well.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
my job here is done, at least for Circus Oasis.
right.
See,
Right.
Mojave MUDCAVES has a different dynamic of characters. It's similar. It has sort of two storylines that merge in a way. And one is a group of 20-something college kids that are going to Lake Havasu to party or whatever. So their whole dynamic's completely different, because it's like, you know, a bunch of goofy 20-somethings.
Right.
And then the other dynamic is a retired truck driver whose adult daughter is kind of screwed up in her life, and he's trying to rekindle that relationship. So it's different sort of things, but especially with the truck driver side of that story, that's where I really try to get the emotional connection, you know. And so hopefully I have achieved that, like in Circus Oasis.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna have to check out that one too, because I just totally dug Circus Oasis so much, you know.
Awesome.
In the Circus Oasis, you know, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but like the hotel itself that the family stays in, it obviously has this theme, this circus theme. And I just really enjoyed that too, just the way that you described like the rooms and the decor and stuff like that. And I was wondering, like, did you just kind of just come up with that all on your own? Have you visited places that are similar to that?
The closest I can say that I visited is Circus in Las Vegas. And I don't remember anything about the decor of Circus, but it was in my head. Well, Circus is a circus themed hotel.
Yeah.
And I see these memes or pictures on social media every once in a while of this place. It's called like the Clown Motel.
Okay.
And it's just got this creepy sign with a big old clown on it, you know, one of those old school signs that has lights and stuff. And so I kind of took those things and merged them together for the idea of a circus themed hotel with the decor and stuff. I mean, yeah, I guess I kind of just thought what would look cool in a circus or carnival themed hotel and kind of went to town on that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's so interesting because you have that imagery, and that did make me think of like Vegas too. Like when you said circus, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? But then that Salton Sea area where you said that you've been through there a lot.
Yeah.
Like I've never been there in my life. And you know, you were kind of painting this visual in there. And there's also a description of kind of the people that live around there. And it sounds like, just based on what you've said on your blog or your newsletter, that like you have like a lot of experience kind of like living around people like that and being around that kind of population. Does that inspire a lot of your fiction?
It does. I mean, yeah. With the Salton Sea, there's a documentary called The Plagues and Pleasures on the Salton Sea that I pulled a lot from too. As in that documentary, they talk to people who actually really live in Bombay Beach. Anyone on Bombay Beach who reads the book may not totally like the representation that they get there, but some of those people really are like them. Not all of them or anything. And
Sure.
Bombay Beach is changing a lot since when I first went to that area, you know, years ago, 15 years ago or something. It looked a lot like I described as very run down. Well, no, in the book they're bringing it back, revitalizing it, but the place was very run down. So it was like, oh man, you just got to write a horror story here.
Right.
It was something else. And the history of the place, which I mentioned a little bit throughout the book, I think is fairly accurate. It's all stuff I looked up, and I've learned the history by going there. They have a welcome center where you can watch little videos on, you know, it used to flourish, Salton Sea, back in the 70s. It really did. And then they had fish die-offs and all those other things we don't need to get into to bring it to where it is today. And it smells like rotten fish and stuff. And it really does. It's kind of gross. And I don't think it'll ever really come back. But in my fictional world, I made it come back. Yeah. But I lived in El Cajon, East San Diego County, on 2nd Street. And I saw all kinds of crazy stuff living there, people walking by my house, and just, I have all kinds of weird stories. So that stuff, definitely I can tap right into that when I'm trying to think of weird characters or, you know, cool villains or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was another book, a novel that I was kind of interested in, because you mentioned, you know, because you talk about Encyclopocalypse in your newsletter, but then you also mentioned Evil Cookie Publishing. I think that's a great name for a publisher to begin with.
Yeah.
But then you mentioned this novel, Tweaker Creatures, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you were saying that was inspired by where you grew up in El Cajon. That's how you say it?
Yes, El Cajon. Yep, absolutely.
Right. And so, like those kind of characters, though, that's kind of frequent in your books in general, like people that are kind of criminals and.
To a certain extent, let me think about it. Yeah, I try and write different, you know, obviously different types of stories with different sort of characters. I live in Tennessee now, so the past few books I've written, they take place in Tennessee. Okay. And a book that's being published next year, Secret Basements, is kind of some of it kind of reflects moving to Tennessee. I use the character who had to move here to take care of an uncle who's sick, and I could use a lot of things that I had seen and things that I thought of and felt when I moved here. Of course, I exaggerate them, and it's, you know, it's a character, so I only take so much, but yeah, you know, so that plays into it. But I did write a lot of stories that, you know, that kind of used a lot of the weird stuff that I'd seen when I lived in El Cajon.
You have 2 books coming out from Encyclopocalypse. One's already out. You got another one coming out. And I just interviewed Wiley Young and his wife, Emily Young, who had a book come out from Encyclopocalypse too. Now he's known for the Magpie Coffin and Death's Head Press. Yep. But you also have something from Death's Head Press too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 2 books with them right now. Stronger Than Hate, a standalone novel. That's one of those extreme, that's an extreme horror novel for sure. Probably one of my most violent and extreme books. But I definitely, the character who's it's about a lady, older woman, retired school teacher, who she falls into a sinkhole in her backyard and she can't get out. And her neighbor kid, who was one of her students before she retired, sees that this has happened. When he goes to get help, he comes back with a bunch of the bad kids that didn't like her, and it goes from there. And so that one, I definitely tried to, you know, make the reader, you know, feel for this woman. It wasn't just like, okay, I put this lady in this situation, they're going to torture her and stuff. Yeah. You know, that was definitely one of probably the earlier stories when I really thought, you know, I need to get people to feel this woman, you know, feel for her emotionally, you know. Yeah. You need to care for this woman, or you're not going to care about the story. It's just going to be, you know, someone might like it. Oh, it's just a trashy story. Okay. But it's going to be way more effective if you care about her. Yeah. So that's one. And the other book is called Shallow Graves. It's a short story collection with my sometimes co-writer, Jack Bantry. 1/3 of the stories are collaborations, and then 1/3 are his standalones, and 1/3 are my standalones.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I'm contracted. Well, I've already written, and I'm contracted to write a splatter Western, like the, you know, Magpie Coffin, for the 2nd series of splatter Westerns that they're putting out next year.
I just love the idea of the splatter Western. I just need to read more, man. I'll definitely check yours out when it comes out too.
Yeah, those are cool. It was really fun writing on. That's one of the books I might be most proud of. I enjoyed the process, even though there's a great, you know, pretty good deal of research that goes into it, so it doesn't come off like, you know, a bunch of bullshit that it's like,
right.
You know. But
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a fun story to write. Yeah.
Awesome.
Heavily inspired by spaghetti westerns, which I would say Magpie Coffin was too, because it's a very spaghetti western type of story. And I love me a good spaghetti western, a Sergio Leone or whatever. But also inspired a lot by Michael McDowell's book, Katie. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael McDowell. That's an older book. It's a historical piece that it doesn't take place in the West. It takes place around like New York, New Jersey, but it's the late 1800s. So it has a lot of that same dynamic that a Western would have. And it was very influential on that book too. I wish I would have seen the show 1883 before I wrote it, because man, that show's great. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Is that like the spin-off from Yellowstone?
Yes, yeah, it's like an origin sort of thing to Yellowstone or something. I didn't care for Yellowstone, but 1883 is fantastic.
Yeah,
it's a great Western. I wish I would have seen it just to give me some. It gives me ideas just watching it. You know,
that's the one that has like Sam Elliott, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So is there like a particular subgenre of horror that you really enjoy?
As far as writing, I've, because of some of my earlier books and stories, I've been kind of known as an extreme horror author, because some of it, like I was talking about, Stronger Than Hate, very extreme, death obsessed. So that, I just look at it like horror. There's different types of stories. I've got stories that are creature features. Mojave Mudcave's a creature feature. More of slow burn stories. I mean, Circus Oasis might kind of be more like a slow burn. I mean, not as slow as one of those big, thick 800 pagers from the 80s or something, but
right.
I just look at it like horror is horror, and I don't really want to get pigeonholed as like, oh, he writes creature stories or zombie stories or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
As far as reading, I mean, I enjoy a good haunted house story for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I like every single thing I read that's haunted house. I want a good one, but I really enjoy a good haunted house ghost story.
Yeah.
It's like the oldest thing in the book, you know, and it's been done a zillion times, but it's just, that's that one. It's like a comfort food, comfort reading for me.
Yeah. I like personally, you know, like I said, I'm not drawn to like the extreme, like violence or like torture and stuff like that. However, that being said, I'm still very intrigued by writers that like excel at that, and like that, you know, it's just like they know how to like essentially push people's buttons, right? And so with that extreme horror that you have written, is it just that you come up with like scenarios, like the way that like in, let's say, like action movies or like superhero movies, they're like, oh, we have to have this set piece. Like when you go to write a story, are you like, oh, let's put this like messed up scene in here, or is it like it just kind of is spawned from what the story you're trying to tell?
I think it's mostly just spawned from the story.
Yeah.
If I've actually gone and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write a short story, and I'm gonna write something that, you know, I don't know. I can't think of a magazine, like a literary short story. I've tried it. Next thing you know, there's a supernatural element in there, and I'm like, what the hell?
Right.
Oh, forget it. It's a horror story now. It just goes in that direction, even when I've tried not to. Right. So I just take it and wherever it goes, it goes. If it happens to be really brutal and violent, then so be it. If not, then that's fine too. The book coming out next year, Secret Basements, that's not it's not a violent horror or brutal or extreme or whatever horror book whatsoever. It's more, I guess, of a slow burn type of horror, you know, a lot of mystery and atmosphere. And I love atmosphere in a story, even the extreme stuff. I really like to get the atmosphere. You were mentioning the hotel. I like you to see the hotel as you're reading it. I like you to see the carpet or the decor, whatever. I just think that's awesome. It's something I enjoy, so I like to put it in there.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil Circus Oasis, but there's one location that some of the main characters go to that's not the hotel. Yeah. And I just thought that was so vividly described, and it kind of made me a little ill just reading it. You know, I was like, oh man, that sounds like a messed up place. You know, I don't want to spoil it, but I thought that was great too. Yeah. So when you're putting the stuff together, do you have like a set of like beta readers or like a particular person? Like, you mentioned a collaborator too. Do you like share your work with him all the time to get feedback?
We used to when we haven't written anything together in a while. We're working on we have 2 books that are out of print, and we're kind of rewriting some things and trying. He publishes a zine called Splatterpunk Zine. He's been putting a lot of his efforts to that, and he's put out a couple of like chapbooks. And I think based on our last conversation, he's going to get back into trying to work on a couple of things together. So I just recently sent him a story, but we used to always send stories back and forth. As far as the books, I've had beta readers that I've used several times. I mean, if someone does a good job, they give great feedback, I love to get, have them read it, because some people don't give the greatest feedback. Oh, it was really cool, I liked it.
Right.
But what didn't you like, or what didn't work?
Right.
And that's fine. I mean, I used to not be a good beta reader. I think now I probably am, because I know really what to look for. People used years ago when I first started writing, I'd read a story and I was like, yeah, I like this part and that part. And it was, it's terrible. No wonder nobody asked me to beta read anymore after that.
Right.
So I have a few people I go to, or one of my go-to things to do is there's a group on Facebook called Books of Horror. Books of Horror group. I'll go and I'll say, I have a book, it's 30,000 words. Would anybody like to beta read it? And I'll usually get some good beta reads out of that.
I recommend that, like, anyone that's watching this video, if they're enjoying, what you're saying, that they should sign up for your newsletter. I've been enjoying getting the updates from it. And I also noticed that in the newsletter, you had a giveaway in one of the earlier newsletters, and it was for a book, A Lesson in Renegade Filmmaking. And it looks like you wrote that with Jack Bantry, and it looks like John Waters is on the cover. Is that book about John Waters?
It isn't. The cover artist, Jack had got the guy doing the cover, and when he showed it to me, I was like, holy shit, that looks like John Waters on the cover. So I guess that's who he met. John Waters has nothing to do with the story.
Oh.
Yeah, when we wrote the story, Jack had sent me this story to beta read, and I was like, oh man, your first half of the story is great. I love it. I said, then it just turns into something else, and you just need to get rid of that second half. And I think I said, do you mind if I finish it or write? And he's like, oh, okay, give it a shot. And so I created that character, and I think I gave him a pencil mustache like John Waters has. And so I think the illustrator, he must have knew he was using John Waters as a mock-up for it, because that's who it looks like is on the cover, right?
Right. Okay,
there's no real talk about that. I just saw it, I was like, dang, that looks just like John Waters.
Right. So it's straight up fiction. It's
straight up fiction. Yeah, it's about it takes place in the 80s, and it's about a kid who's renting videos from this video store, and he starts allowing the kid to rent horror movies, even though the kid probably shouldn't be. And they develop a relationship that kind of goes sideways as the guy's telling the kid about the movies and kind of teaching him about kind of grooming him. It's a really weird story. It's a good story. I love that story. It's fantastic. I think it's our best collaboration. That's why we put it in that little chapbook. It was originally published in Dark Moon Digest several years ago.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out too. I thought it's like, oh, this is random. He just has a book on filmmaking too,
I know. That is funny. Now you mention it. It's called filmmaking or whatever. So yeah, that could be misleading, can't it?
Well, so one other thing that's in your newsletter, this was really interesting to me too, was that you have this trilogy, the Cult of Rattlesnake Mountain, right?
That's the trilogy is called Evil Awakens Trilogy, and there's Terror of Rattlesnake Mountain, Ghost of Rattlesnake Mountain, and Cult of Rattlesnake Mountain.
Yeah. And so in one of your newsletters, you were talking about how you went to this convention and it was super successful. Like everyone bought all your stuff, but this one series doesn't seem to be catching on. Yeah. And to me, that's really intriguing, because that makes me actually just want to read that trilogy first, as a writer, when you feel like something's not catching on, how do you self-assess? What do you think? Oh, well, this is working, this is not. How do you determine what the factor is there?
I don't know. I mean, for the convention, people are looking at the covers, right? Don't judge a book by the cover, but when you're at a convention, a lot of what you're doing is kind of judging it by the cover.
Right.
And people might come up to the table and they'll ask about certain books, and I'll tell them about that book. And I was asked about Rattlesnake Mountain a few times. That was the only one there, was book 1. Book 2 is now published. I have copies of it for my next convention in a few weeks, but book 3 is going to be published in a couple weeks here.
Yeah.
So that, I would get asked about it and then they wouldn't bite, because I'm not great at pitching my books. It's not easy to stand there behind the table and give a person a reason to buy the book, but they buy other ones. I sold copies of everything else but that one. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's a coming of age story and a lot of people like that type of story. So I thought, I always mention that it's a coming of age story. I mentioned it takes place in the early 90s. People sometimes like a little nostalgia type thing. So I think you would be hitting on two subjects or two that should check two boxes for at least some people.
Right.
But for whatever reason, no one bid on that one. Now, I don't know. Is it because it's the first part in a trilogy? I thought a lot of people like trilogies and series. Yeah. I personally am not a big fan of trilogies and series, but I know people like that.
Yeah.
So I was just like, man, I don't know what it is. So I'm curious. I'm doing a convention here in Knoxville called CreepyCon in about 3 weeks. And I'll have book 1 and 2 of that series along with, most of my other books. I'm curious to see if anybody bites at that convention, get a little bit more data to try and figure out what's going on.
Right. Well, is that the only series that you have that's a trilogy, or do you have other books that have sequels?
No, that's the only one. They that publisher, Raventail Press, they were interested at that time when I pitched it. They were interested in series, and I wasn't really into that. And I pitched them 2 standalone books that I could turn into series, because the first book, Terror of Rattlesnake Mountain, was a standalone novel, just a coming of age story. It took place in the early 90s. Yeah. And then when they wanted that, I happened to be in the hospital recovering from COVID, and I got the email saying, "Oh, we like that book. Do you have an idea for a trilogy?" Why, yes, I do. And I didn't, but of course you say you do. And so when I was sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I couldn't sleep, I was thinking up, I came up with the idea for the trilogy and I pitched it and they took it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't usually, I don't write trilogies or series. I like standalone books. It's what I like to read and what I like to write. But I like all 3 of these books. They're all very different. They take place. What works for me is the first one takes place in the 90s. The second one around 2011, when we had the economic crash. I kind of used that in the plot. And then the third one is current day. All taking place on Rattlesnake Mountain. So I did 3 different stories that have arcs that go through all of the stories, running arcs with different characters and stuff that I feel like is tied very well in the third book.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd love to check it out too. One thing I always try to preface when I do these videos is that, like, I didn't really get into horror until COVID, right? Like I've always liked horror movies, but as far as like horror literature, I really went full in during COVID, and I've just been enjoying it since. What I'm noticing, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there's not a lot of series of horror books. It seems like people kind of do want just one and done books. Are there any like main horror series that I should just like, I should know this is a big series?
I mean, there definitely have been quite a few series. I mean, if we're looking at like the last 10 or so years, I mean, because I'm not a series guy, I'm not maybe the one to really answer that, because I don't when I can't help it. When I find out it's a series, I'm usually like, I don't know if I want to get invested. I like the I do like Joe Lansdale writes the Hap and Leonard books, and you can say those are a series, but each one is an individual story. It just has Hap and Leonard as the characters, so it's kind of like the old mysteries that would like Mike Shane mysteries or whatever, where it's the same people solving a mystery, but they're not all connected. I read Hunger Games, and it got to the end and it gave me this cliffhanger, like you have to pick up the second book, and I was so pissed off that I didn't pick up the second book. So damn it. Yeah. I wanted a whole, I knew it was a series, but I thought each book would at least, I mean, it had a story, but it's like the cliffhanger drove me nuts. I just didn't like that, Right. There was a horror series that came out, I mean, I want to say 15 years ago, that Jonathan Mayberry wrote, the Rotten Ruin series.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a zombie series, coming of age sort of thing. And those books are really good. They tell a complete arc story in each one, but there is an arc that goes through all of them. But it's not enough to make you feel like you're totally on a cliffhanger after each book. Yeah. That's what I like if I'm going to read a series. And that was a good one. I think I read the first 3 books in that one. I think there might be a 4th. I'm not sure.
Right. That's a really good example. And I should have thought Jonathan Mayberry, because I was thinking there's the Joe Ledger books too.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, he's got a couple of like series of things. And I know that like Brian Keene has some series of books.
Yeah,
too.
he's got 3 or 4 The Rising and different books in that.
Yeah.
So they're out there for sure. And it was real big when zombies were just like everywhere. Everyone had to have a zombie series.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And then there's also like the Clickers books. That,
That's a good example. Yeah.
I just, the reason why it's intriguing to me is just because it's like, I feel like our main media nowadays is just like comic books, right? And like superheroes, and like the TV shows and all that kind of stuff is just about continuing stories. Whereas horror, a lot of times it's just, you know, like you said, like just one and done. You know, obviously there are series in horror, but like I think that fans kind of like that one and done. And yeah, I think what you're saying is good, like where it doesn't end on a cliffhanger, where it's like it's a complete story in one. That's so much more satisfying than like, oh great, I gotta go buy 2 more to get the complete story, you know?
Yeah, it is for me at least.
Yeah.
Some people, I don't know. People seem to like series. I'm just built differently.
Yeah. Some people eat that up, you know, but yeah. So I mean, that's kind of what I had for today. Like usually when we get to the end of the video, I ask the writer if they want to, like, you know, plug specific things, if you want to just tell people where they can find you, and I'll take everything that you say and I'll put it in the description too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My stuff my books can be found on Amazon. You look up Robert Essig. I got an Amazon page. Godless.com. I've got some stuff on there. I will be having a monthly short story on Godless for the next 10 months. So that's something to look forward to, godless.com. But I'm on all social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and I use my name, Robert Essig, for everything. TikTok, it's Robert Essig's Horror, but everything else is just Robert Essig. And I'm not the Robert Essig who won $1 million, because if you type my name in, that guy comes up ahead of me every time.
Right. Yeah. Well, Robert, I actually really enjoyed talking to you, and I really liked Circus Oasis. I mean, obviously, like the stuff you've been talking about with me today, it just makes me want to read more of your books. I'm hoping if you'd ever would want to come back on the channel, maybe Danny would come on too, and he could listen to some of your audiobooks too. And
oh yeah, awesome. I'd love to.
Awesome, man. Cool. So until then, you know, I guess we'll see you then next time.
All right. Good to be on.
Thanks, man.